After leaving Humberstone, we headed north until we entered La Reserva Nacional Pampa de Tamarugal. The Pampa de Tamarugal is a huge plateau that sits between the Chilean coastal range and the Andes Mountains. Before the arrival of Europeans and the development of the saltpeter mines in the area, much of the plateau was covered in a forest of Prosopis tamarugo trees, from which it takes its name. These trees produce an extremely hard wood, which is a great source of fuel for fires, and the saltpeter mines of the area exploited them nearly to the point of extinction to power their operations. The remnants of the great tamarugo forest that can be found nowadays are largely the product of reforestation projects, the results of which have been, in my opinion at least, very impressive. Once established, the tamarugo tree can live for up to 400 years in one of the driest environments on the planet, receiving somewhere around 3 millimeters of rain annually. This may sound like an impossibility, but this tree has an extremely special adaptation. Through a process called reverse transpiration, these trees can literally pull water straight out of the air as long as the humidity is above 80%. The trees then release the water back into the soil through their roots to be reabsorbed when they need it. For me, these artificial tamarugo forests are a shining example of how humans can affect their environment for the better on the large scale. Chile has managed to turn one of the driest deserts in the world into a forest, and managed to save an endangered species in the process. As we headed north, the highway dove into a deep canyon, which provided us with one of the most peaceful drives on the trip. The slope of the highway was exactly right so that we could just put the motorcycle in neutral, turn off the motor, and coast for 20 kilometers without even touching the brakes. And at the bottom of the canyon, at a place where there had presumably been water in the past, we came across some really cool geoglyphs. The Nazca Lines are certainly the most famous geoglyphs in South America, but the Atacama Desert is full of thousands of smaller ones. There must be some kind of effect that deserts have on the human brain that compel people to make weird things. Because people still do it, even today. Artists seek out extremely barren desert locations in which to install their art. And unfailingly, curious travelers, having seen something unnatural in the distance, will go out of their way to investigate this strange thing in the desert. Once we reached the northernmost part of Chile, we headed up into the mountains one more time, into the realm of the candelabra cactus. Here the desert receives a couple more millimeters of rain per year, which is just enough to allow the survival of these tree-like cactus. Chilean Highway number 11, which promised to deliver us to the little town of Putre high in the mountains, is also the fastest link between Bolivia and the Pacific Ocean, which meant that there was a lot more heavy truck traffic than we anticipated. And as a result of all this traffic, it appears that the highway is under a state of constant repair. This, combined with the reckless driving of the Bolivian truck drivers, made for some rather unpleasant miles, and the multiple wrecked and burned out trucks that could be seen from the side of the highway provided an ample reminder for me to keep my wits about me. It's probably worth mentioning that much of northern Chile used to belong to Peru and Bolivia. Chile stole this territory from Peru and Bolivia along with a big chunk of Argentina in a relatively recent war, which is why Bolivia is now pursuing international litigation against Chile for their rightful access to the Pacific Ocean. It's also why this is the only place I've ever traveled where the locals casually reminded me to stay on the road because of the landmines. Anyway, we obviously managed to navigate northern Chile without getting blown up, and we arrived at the little town of Putre, which I found to be quite nice. It was welcoming to tourists, but not overly touristy, and we found free camping. From here we could explore the nearby archaeological sites and the nearby high-altitude lakes, from which we could actually see Bolivia. Here we found a wide variety of bird life, which made Gabby quite happy, and there were lovely herds of llamas and alpacas grazing peacefully on the shores, under the shadow of giant, slumbering, snow-capped volcanoes. And after visiting the very cold high-altitude lakes, we returned to Putre to take a dip in the local hot spring, which was absolutely delicious. Then, having explored a good chunk of what the region had to offer, we bid farewell to Putre and headed for Peru. So we just arrived at the border, the Peruvian border in Chile, and it's already proving harder to leave Chile than it was to enter. We have to go and get some paper that we don't have and fill it out, so... Okay, so it took us, 15 minutes to get checked out of Chile? Yeah. Now we're gonna see how long it takes to get back into Peru! So I think we are officially entered into Peru.
Yes, I hope so.
It took us about 45 minutes, the entire process. But because Peru is actually 2 hours different than Chile,
Well, we started at 1 o'clock in Chile and ended at 11:45 in Peru. So this has technically been the quickest border crossing of the trip, even though it took 45 minutes. Also, this is an especially confusing border crossing. It's designed so you can drive through, but they have the little things closed off so you can't drive through it and you have to walk up to the window, and it's really confusing. But yeah, they have a nice new shiny border crossing station that's not functioning the way it should.
After arriving in Peru, we drove along the barren desert coast for a ways, until we arrived at the small desert city of Tacna, where we immediately splurged on ceviche and fresh fruit juice. Peruvian ceviche tops the list of my favorite foods of the trip. Chilean food was, for the most part, boring and overpriced, so I was really happy to be back in Peru, the land of cheap, delicious food. From Tacna, we headed up into the Andes Mountains again, following an extremely well-paved and lightly trafficked road, which brought us to the town of Tarata, where we spent the night in the fairgrounds surrounded by thousands of acres of terraces. After we left Tarata the next morning, we discovered why there was so little traffic on the road. From Tarata northward, the road was unpaved. It wasn't a bad road, but it was under construction, which made some sections difficult. Here I should probably mention the most important thing we've learned about driving in Peru, and that is, never assume a road will be paved, even if it looks like a main highway on the map. Anyway, after winding along this dirt road for a very long time, we eventually found our way back to the original route we took when we were heading south. And we headed for the same campground that we had used on the way down, the awesomely named Silistani Necropolis. And it was here around nightfall that whatever I ate for lunch that day started trying to kill me. After several bouts of vomiting and diarrhea, I became severely dehydrated and extremely weak, so Gabby called a taxi to take us to the nearest hospital, in the city of Puno. For the next hour or so, I was the thirstiest that I've ever been in my entire life.
They have to rehydrate me, because I can't keep any water down. I just throw it up immediately. So I have this nifty bag of water and medicine piped directly into my arms, which is really nice.
So we are in Puno at the hospital right now.
Because Peru is trying to kill me.
What happened?
Bad roadside food.
Again.
Just like last time. Didn't learn.
Mm-hmm.
This is twice now that I've gotten sick in Peru. And at the same place. It's Silistani. Maybe the ancient spirits are angry that I said their tombs look like coffee cups. The Incas are taking their revenge on me.
Yeah. But the last time we ate at the side of the road.
Last time we ate on the side of the road.
Okay.
Sandwiches from now on.
Just peanut butter sandwiches for the rest of the trip. Until we get to Mexico.
After some feverish and incoherent babbling into the camera, some much-needed rest, and about 14 hours hooked up to an IV, I was feeling much better. Antibiotics are really an incredible thing, and it's a shame that so many of them are losing potency due to overuse. So if you have a cold or flu, for God's sake, don't use antibiotics. Those are caused by viruses, and antibiotics don't do anything to help. Anyway, we moved out of the hospital into a hotel room in Puno to rest for one more day, and then we headed out back on the road. Peru's get well present to me came in the form of the horrible traffic of the city of Juliaca. Here, drivers will cut you off at every opportunity they get, and they will never make eye contact with you because they know that they are being horrible people. Another quirk of driving in Peru is that you can drive for literally hundreds of miles without seeing a gas station, and then see somewhere around 100 of them in the span of about 10 miles. And among those 100 gas stations, maybe 2 of them will allow you to pay with Visa card, and one of them probably has a broken card reader. And to top it all off, not all the gas stations have gas all the time. All this can add up to be pretty exasperating. As we headed north, we saw dark clouds building on the horizon, and we were soon confronted with the strange phenomena of water falling out of the sky, which, since we spent much of the last month in the Atacama Desert, was something that we hadn't had to think about for a long time.
So one of the plus sides of taking the coastal route through Peru is that you don't have to worry about rainstorms ruining your day. I guess it's not really ruining the day. We just had to stop earlier than planned, which is probably fine because I'm still recovering from my little ordeal in the hospital. But There's a giant rainstorm sitting between us and where we need to go. So I think we're going to stop here for the night.
So I just discovered that the antibiotics they gave me to fight off the incredibly robust Peruvian stomach bugs are from Uruguay. So, one more time, way to go, Uruguay. As we continued towards Cusco, we noticed that the landscape was getting greener and greener, and giant guinea pigs were becoming increasingly common. We stopped off at the archaeological site of Racchi to see some impressive Inca stonework, with still functioning fountains and terraces with built-in steps.
So just for the record, I should probably explain what's happening here. Was it 2 days ago I was in the hospital? 2 days ago I was in the hospital because I ate some bad food from a restaurant on the side of the road. And now, 2 days later, I'm eating food from a restaurant on the side of the road again. So we'll see how this goes. I don't think I'll ever learn.
We made our way to Lago Huarcapay outside of Cusco, where we had a workaway set up with Enrique. We passed our time helping him rent boats on the lake and hanging out with his incredibly smart and obedient dog Sisi. But best of all, we got to help plant a garden on top of a legitimate Inca terrace. Enrique's place sits on top of a pretty impressive Inca site, which can be seen all the more clearly from the lake. Here you can see the most impressive feature of the site, the mile-long gigantic staircase of terraces, irrigated at the top by a massive 4-foot-deep canal that brings water from a faraway water source to the northwest-facing slope, which presumably provided exactly the right environment to grow some specific crop. Lucky for us, Enrique also had his own floating island, which was really cool because we didn't get to go explore the famous floating islands of Puno and Lake Titicaca, because I was too busy being really sick in the hospital. The floating islands are built entirely of reeds, both living and dead. The roots of the living ones weave a mat that holds the entire thing together, and the dead leaves piled on top provide a dry surface on which people can comfortably live. We had a great time paddling around the lake, until Gabby saw a bird in the distance and got overly excited and tried to sink her unsinkable kayak. It was actually quite difficult to get her back in the boat as well, and the water was apparently quite cold. We had a very pleasant stay at Huarcapay, but eventually it came time to head to Cusco, because we had a very important appointment that we could not miss. That's all for now. Thanks everyone for all your support and encouragement. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, please do let me know. We'll see you all next time.